The Ben Simmons trade saga has rumbled on for what seems like an eternity now, and the best thing for both the player and the Sixers is just to part ways so both parties can move on. Simmons, though, isn't happy at how the Philly outfit has handled his trade request and has recently vented his frustrations. Stay with us, as today we are looking at Simmons' comments. First up, how exactly did Simmons' beef with the Sixers start? The dispute between the two sides went back to before last season's trade deadline, when the Sixers were reportedly looking seriously at the possibility of bringing in James Harden from the Houston Rockets, wanting to use Simmons as a makeweight in the transfer. But ultimately, the proposed trade collapsed and Harden ended up in Brooklyn. Obviously, as we all know, that deal didn't happen and Simmons was left with a sour taste in his mouth and has acted, some might say, pretty childishly ever since. Simmons has failed to get over the fact that he wasn't reviewed as the top dog and was angry that the organization was willing to let him go. At the time, he said, "I mean, this is a business. Things like that happen. Only thing I can control is how I approach my work, the games, and my day-to-day things. So, I'm just trying to be professional and to do the right thing and help my team get wins." Simmons went on to struggle from the foul line in the series against the Wizards and then against Atlanta, prompting Doc Rivers to question whether or not Simmons was a championship-level point guard. Simmons then had his agent clarify his position at the Sixers, to which he was told he had a future in Philly, but then last summer, the team opened trade talks, which then stagnated. It hasn't been a great year for Simmons, and he will be looking to revive his career as soon as this is all over. Next, let's hear about what his own teammates have said about him. It was revealed earlier this week that the Sixers power forward Joel Embiid has come out and criticized Simmons for his perceived inability to take criticism nor be able to self-critique his own performances. As well as this, Embiid threw the point guard under the bus last year by blaming him for the team's playoff loss, something which the Aussie never really got over. Simmons himself had the chance to pile on Embiid for his performance against the Raptors in 2019, but he didn't, so he reportedly feels even more bitter towards the Cameroonian for attacking him. It seems as though the pair's relationship has completely broken down, and fans will want to see this situation resolved as soon as possible. Late last year, when the saga was in full swing, Simmons returned to training with the Sixers, and forward Tobias Harris told the media that the team was completely fine with him returning. Shooting guard Furkan Korkmaz echoed his comment, saying, "It was good to have him back. Personally, I missed him. To be on the same floor with him again, personally, I'm happy to see him back here on the court, and I hope we have more work to do." What do you make of Simmons and the Sixers saga? Time to part ways? Surely, right? Let us know your thoughts below. So, what has Simmons himself said about the situation? Stay tuned to find out. As has been well documented, Simmons is far from happy at how Joel Embiid spoke of him, and even less happy with the Sixers management, which, as we know, dated back to last year after Rivers' comments. Apparently, the Aussie is disappointed that Rivers didn't come to see him last summer when he was training out in LA. However, Simmons did reveal that Rivers had called and texted him, so claiming that Rivers didn't come out to LA to see him is only half the story. He fully admits he didn't text back or pick up the calls, so what does he expect? He's a fully grown man, allegedly. He said he feels as though the Sixers could have done more at the time, like showing up at the gym he was training at in the San Fernando Valley. I mean, why does he just assume the management would fly all the way to California, the opposite side of the country, to come and see him? Grow up. You can't ignore calls and texts and then claim the team is not doing enough to reach out. That logic is seriously skewed. Simmons has this week again called out the Philly outlet for what he sees as mismanaging his trade. The team are again reportedly in the hunt for James Harden and are trying to recoup as much as possible for Simmons to facilitate a deal for Harden. And it is this which has upset Simmons. What do you make of the Sixers' handling of the saga? What do we know about Harden's situation then? Stay tuned to find out. As far as we know, the Brooklyn Nets number 13 is more than open to a move to Philadelphia, but won't make a formal request due to not wanting to deal with the public backlash. He doesn't think it would do his public image any good to request to leave two different franchises in back-to-back seasons, and we can see his reasoning. It isn't exactly a great look. Instead, Harden is leaving it up to the powers that be and will be crossing every available part of his body in hopes that Daryl Morey, the Sixers' president of basketball operations, makes a move for the 6'5" Cali native. With the deadline fast approaching, it is still expected that the two teams will talk, and whether that will end in them hashing out a trade which involves both Simmons and Harden remains to be seen. There are definite pros and cons for both sides when considering a trade between the pair, so they will have to weigh these up carefully. It could all hinge on whether or not the Sixers are willing to include assets, whether that be future picks or young talent, as well as Simmons. The Nets also risk losing Harden for nothing this summer, and if he doesn't go now, they could risk keeping around a disgruntled player, and we all know how that usually turns out, right, Ben Simmons? Can you see this deal going through? Let us know below. News of a mammoth deadline day 4-team trade now. Stick around to hear all about it. Earlier today, it was confirmed that the LA Clippers Sixers, Sacramento Kings, Milwaukee Bucks, and the Detroit Pistons have all agreed to a deal which sees 7 players switch teams. The Kings will be sending Marvin Bagley III to Detroit, and in return will take Donde DiVincenzo from the Bucks and Josh Jackson and Trey Lyles, both from the Pistons. The Bucks are sending Rodney Hood and Semi Ojeleye to LA, whilst themselves receiving Serge Ibaka from the Clippers, as well as 2 future second-round picks and cash. You guys got all of that? Quite a lot to take in there. The Pistons can possibly count themselves as the team to do best out of the reshuffle, as they are acquiring the number 2 draft pick overall from the 2018 draft in Bagley, who is still only 22 and has bags of potential. He hasn't hit his peak so far and only averaged 13.5 points during his time in Sacramento, but if the Pistons can find a way to unlock the talent which he so clearly possesses, they will have some players on their hands. With DiVincenzo heading to the Kings, the Sacramento outfit are acquiring a player of real quality who started 66 games for the Bucks last year before his progress was halted by injury. What do you guys think has done best out of this deal, and which player do you think will benefit most? Give us your thoughts below. And finally, a look at an early social justice campaigner who risked it all back in the 1990s. Before Colin Kaepernick changed the face of American sports and the way the public perceives social justice, many of you will remember Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, who refused to stand for the national anthem in protest of the American flag, which was a symbol of oppression, of tyranny. He also said, "This country has a long history of that, oppression and tyranny. I don't think you can argue the facts. You can't be for God and for oppression." As you can imagine, America in the 1990s was a very different place, and the NBA wasn't the neoliberal organization it pretends it is today back then. Abdul-Rauf was slammed with a suspension without pay, and the league reasoned that players must line up in a dignified posture. After the NBA Players Union disputed the suspension, he was reinstated but lost more than $30,000 in earnings. Abdul-Rauf is now due an apology from the league and might even claim he is entitled to his lost earnings plus compensation for what he went through. If the NBA are the social justice campaigners they now claim to be, they will issue a full and sincere apology to Abdul-Rauf and give him the money back he lost. What do you guys remember about Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf? As always, thanks for tuning in today, and remember to stop by next time for some more revelations. Also, why not share our video today with any NBA fan friends you have? Adios, amigos.